Sadistic Penguin Studios presents the At the Show podcast with Tom Yumper Garcia.
Okay, you people sit tight, hold the fort, and keep the home fires burning. And if we're not back by dawn, call the president.
And Tony Chalsa Burt.
I don't know this industry jargon, YP, MP, whatever, okay? All I know is that I cannot get a record contract. We cannot get a record contract unless I take these tapes.
It's almost time, so grab a drink, get your popcorn ready, and join the film discussion with two guys from Chicago talking movies.
We are back. Welcome back to another episode of the At the Show podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Tom Yumper Garcia. I'm with my other co-host, Tony, the Sugar Baggy Burt. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing good. Real quickly here, got some numbers in 23. Well, we're going to have 23 episodes, but after today, we have talked about over 134 movies together, my friend.
Oh my goodness. I was about to say, we are on the Michael Jordan episode of the season. 23,
we sure
baby.
are. We sure are. Slam dunk. But I'm doing good. Excited to talk some movies.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got an action-packed show today. A return of an old segment and a old format show with one of our OG listeners and supporters of the show. Also, he has his own stuff that we will plug and get to. Really looking forward to that. Me and Tone decided to do this show due to the fact that Wolverine and Deadpool had just released recently. And what better time to talk about movies that involve superheroes and maybe bringing up some old surprises and, you know, maybe more familiar films that we know. You never know. But I'm really excited for this one, my man.
It's gonna be good. I've since this was on the radar of trying to line up something, I thought this would be a great idea that we came up with together. So let's rock it.
Yes, sir. So let's get into our what we've been watching this week, my man.
Let's do it.
That's a me. And also, what were you just watching?
What you been watching this week, Tone?
Ooh, two movies here. 1990s Internal Affairs, which stars our man Andy Garcia. It's got Richard Gere. It's got a Baldwin in it. And honestly, how many times have you heard, this punch in a film before?
2 earrings in her left ear. She's very pretty too. Well, she's very, very pretty. A little skinny for my taste, but they say skinny ones give good head, so.
How many times have you heard that punch noise in how many 80s movies? And honestly, he lands it great. But Internal Affairs is really, I also like it because Jackie Laurie Metcalf from Roseanne is in it, plays his partner. But I like Richard Gere playing the sleaze. This is right around the same time as Pretty Woman. So, of course, you get the direct opposite. He's got multiple women he's having affairs with. Meanwhile, Andy Garcia is trying to bust him. And the one Baldwin brother who is in it does a really good job also. And that would be William Baldwin. But it's a good 1990s, that kind of cop thriller type of movie that I enjoy quite a lot. You ever see this one?
Yes, I have. It always cracks me up with Richard Gere's I guess New York accent.
Oh yeah.
He's done there's another film later that he's done called Brooklyn's Finest, where he does the same kind of accent, and it always makes me laugh. But the punch sound just cracked me up.
I had to get the punch sound for had to make it on one of our episodes, and I was going through clips, and I was like, they put the punch sound in this movie, but a good time. The second movie that I have watched this weekend is from 1987. It is The Hidden. It stars Kyle MacLachlan and Michael Noray, who has been in lots of different things before. But in this movie is just really awesome. What really from the thing I can describe about this movie is it's kind of like The Thing. It's kind of like late 80s awesomeness. The alien has a certain penchant for sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And what's really cool is just the intro here will give you a little bit of what you're in for in this movie. the alien is currently inhabiting him, but he needs his heavy metal. And the movie is really awesome. If you are a fan of Kyle MacLachlan and Twin Peaks or any of his other movies that he has been a part of, this is a really awesome under the radar 80s sci-fi movie that I suggest to anyone who, because it really is, there's some scariness to it. It's got those Thing vibes because the alien kind of goes into you and takes over. A lot of really cool graphics, but definitely worth checking out. You ever see this one yet?
Yes, I have a long time ago, but I was actually thinking about putting this one up on for a mini review in the future, sometime down the later the year.
It's hilarious. You should bring this up because I don't ask you. I haven't asked you much, but I would ask if you can maybe include this in your 31 days of Halloween horror. And I will definitely buy you a pizza because just to see your work on this would be amazing. And my father would also love it too because it's a classic that I have the soundtrack, which we go through soundtracks a lot because it's just loaded with good heavy metal. But yeah, check it out, man. It'd be cool to do that.
Definitely will, man. Definitely, it's on there. I have it. I have my list halfway done. I haven't got it all the way done. I'm still picking through the ideas, but yeah, it was. It's definitely was on there. So
cool. What have you been watching, my man?
So the first movie I've been watching, for fellow Penguin Keelan, I constantly talk to her about random Fallout stuff, and she is a huge fan of RoboCop. So we kind of talk about RoboCop a lot. I happened to put this on this week at work's been a little hectic, so I have to put this on in the background noise. And this part of the movie just always cracks me up.
How you doing? Bitches leave.
Gee, Poppy. Bye.
Always cracks me up with that part with Kurtwood Smith when he breaks into Miguel Ferrer's apartment or house and he tells bitches leave, which is what Paul Van Houten actually had said to him for to tell the girls to leave. He says, "You say bitches leave and they leave." So RoboCop, one of those films that definitely could not be made today, but it's got that grimy, edgy sci-fi film to it, and it's gory, which is totally 80s, and I love it. I wish it could be something similar could be made today, but I don't think it will be. What do you think, Tom?
It was the first time I was asked to leave the room by my father because of that scene at the beginning where he's getting shot up. I watch it later. It's I've seen a lot worse, but again, it is for the time and excellent movie. The remake was not so excellent, but this movie definitely, again, that the Kurtwood Smith performance is amazing in the movie. Miguel Ferreira, amazing in the movie. Just a lot of really good. The bad guy, really good job. Isn't that what's his name? Who does
Kurtwood Smith?
The guy who's ahead of him, the one who runs.
Dick Jones.
Dick Jones. Just another really, because it's the same guy from Total Recall, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Dana Hurley.
Yes, which is also amazing. He's the gentleman who plays the banjo in Deliverance, which is crazy to put all those.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ronnie Cox. Ronnie
Cox, yeah. Crazy that he does all three of those movies, but great pick. Yeah.
Yeah, and to go and coincide with what you said this week when it was John Leguizamo's birthday, so I decided to pop in a Pacino film where he does kind of yell, but he is not going full blown old man Pacino and yelling at Cloud. And I always love this part of the film.
You think you're big time? You're gonna fucking die big time.
Always one of my favorite scenes when he loads up the gun in the bathroom, even though he has no more shells left. He just does it to try to scare people and runs out there with and everybody's ran away already because he was screaming like a maniac. Carlito's Way, I love it. It's a Brian De Palma film, has an excellent cast in Sean Penn. You have Al Pacino in there. You have the young Viggo Mortensen's actually in the film. It's Luis Guzman's in it. It's very well done. It's, to me, we always discuss Scarface, me and you. We always had the discussion, and I personally prefer this film over Scarface. I think Scarface just hasn't aged that well. I think this film has. in terms of styling. I like it a little bit more than Scarface. That's just me personally. But yeah, I love Carlito's Way. What do you think about it?
I think it's Scarface to like your teenage years, and Carlito's Way something a little bit more mature for when you're older. Like I didn't get Carlito's Way until now. I actually think it's probably every time I think about, as Katie states here, we always quote Viggo Mortensen's. I was going to bring that up in a second. I'm glad she did, but a great Leguizamo's great. Benny Blanco, just a really personally, Sean Penn's ridiculous over-the-top performance is just awesome. That party he has at his apartment where people at his house where everyone's doing it out in the grass. But great movie, man. I mean, I'm a sucker for anything Pacino, like 99 and before. So like it's another just a good Pacino.
Yes, my man. So that is what we watched this week. Let us know what you watched over at the pod show at the pod show podcast on Twitter or X or whoever Elon decides to sell it to next week. We are also on Facebook at Statistic Penguin Studios, or you can just let us know in the comments here on this YouTube video, or tweet at us at Lil Yumper or the Sugar Baggy. So that's what we watched. We have a returning segment of the In Defense Of segment, Tone. We brought this one back. If you guys don't know who are first joining the show, this is a segment where we bring somebody on who would defend a film that they think gets a bad rap. And we can either agree or disagree. Again, everything is subjective. It's up to whoever watches the film. But we like to discuss these sometimes films that are considered stinkers or bad films, and sometimes we agree and sometimes we don't. So you want to get into that segment, Tone?
Let's do it. Let's let it roll.
Cool. So our guest for the In Defense segment this week, he is the host of the Inside the Baseball Rabbit Hole podcast, as well as a co-host of one of the oldest and popular Cubs fan podcasts, the Son Ranto Show. He is a cornerstone of the Ranters crew, a man who met a point he couldn't argue with, and a hater of the DH, the one and only Mr. Michael Cotton.
Oh, hey. And I love that you say I'm a hater of the DH. I am definitely a hater of the DH, but only in the National League. Like, people get this wrong about me all the time. They just say that I hate the DH and I don't want it. That was originally, like, way back in the day, that was my take on it. But as I matured and I got older, I realized the American League having the DH and the National League not having it was the best of both worlds, especially when they didn't play each other. Because then we'd get to it was like the most exciting thing when you'd get to the World Series and they would alternate the different, whether you're going to do the DH or not. Originally, it was every other year. Weird, right? And then they went to home and away being different, which stadium you're at. Baseball Rabbit Hole, I have a whole episode about that. But I realized that's the best thing because it's two different styles. And I was always super interested to see how the American League pitchers would handle taking in at bat and how their managers would handle them pitching in those situations. But then on the flip side, when the National League would go to American League parks, it's like, oh, who are they going to use for their DH on this? Like, it made baseball more interesting. And the fact that we only have one rule, whether they would have gone to no DH or as they did to universal DH, I think that just actually makes baseball a little bit worse. Which Yumper is just like sitting there like, I have heard this so many damn times. And that was maybe the quickest and most succinct point I've ever made about it. I will go off forever about this.
You know what's funny? I talk to Danny. I text Danny a lot over Twitter and whatnot, and back and forth. And sometimes he'll be like, "Yeah, I gotta ask Cotton something." He goes, "He's probably gonna complain about the DH." No, Cotton's hilarious when he goes on his rants. That's what you're famous for, my man, for the Son Ranto Show. To the point where even yesterday on your show, you forget you were ranting so much you forgot what your point was.
Yeah, I was trying to rein it in. I was trying to get to a point, and when I do that, sometimes I do lose where I'm going. When I'm just in full rant mode, it doesn't matter where I'm going. I'm just going. But I do want to say thank you for having me on. Long time listener, first time caller, and first time watcher. I have never seen this on YouTube before. I only listen in the podcast version. But you know, I was here back the first one when you were doing it with Svo, and now Tony, you've come in. Like, this is a great show, and I have honestly, this in defense of, I didn't know if I'd ever get to do it because you guys have done superhero shows in the past, and I was kind of like, I don't think they're going to do this again. And so this week, I reached out to Yumper yesterday because I just listened to the podcast, and I was like, hey, you're doing superheroes. I want to do an in defense of Iron Man 2. And Yumper said, okay. And over the last 24 hours, I have watched all 3 Iron Man movies in order to bone up for this and just make sure I have my stuff together. And I'm really excited about it because, look, I mean, I would like to get you guys' take. Rank the Iron Man movies 1 through 3. Rank them in the order that you actually like them, and see how it compares to like how the world does.
Well, sure, man. We can do that. But before we get into Iron Man, just a couple questions about you, my man.
Nobody wants to know about me.
Well, we always ask these guests, our guests, a few questions about themselves. What got you into film? Like, are there a certain film that got you into movies that you saw that gravitated you towards it? 'Cause I know you like film a lot. Like, I know you talked to me about it before on the side. Like, what got you into film?
I don't even know if I am into film. I'm just like, I like watching movies. Prior to the show, we talked about, like, I was a child of the 80s, right? I'm about 10 years older than you, Yump, and I'm not sure how old you are, Tony, but, back then, like, I'm pre-VHS, right? So when that came out, like, we only had a few movies, so we would just watch the living crap out of all of them. And then as it became more available, I was just like into it. I just wanted to watch as many different things as I could. And now it's really hard kind of to go back because there's so much stuff out there. And then as for like film, I guess when I was in college, I was an English major, and I took a class about film. Fiction into film is what it was called. And so we would have to read the novel, and then we would watch the movie. And so we kind of got talking about movies then. And I think that's maybe the first time I put any sort of like true thought into it. And then outside of that, anybody who's ever listened to the Son Ranto show knows that I just tend to have bad takes on everything. And so when it comes to movies, I'm like, it's no different. Like, oh yeah, you think the Universal DH is great? Well, let me tell you why, why Return of the Jedi is a great movie. Like, people are like, what are you talking about? Like, it's just, I always, for whatever reason, I have a different, screw loose going on up here when I'm thinking about my movies. By the way, RoboCop, I'll buy that for $1. Love it, man.
For $1.
God, how many times did we say that?
Yeah, I was cracking up because you sent Red Foreman in the private chat. I started laughing.
The whole time I watched that 70s show and now that 90s show, which I've watched, like, I seriously, every time he says he's going to put his foot up somebody's ass, I imagine he's like that guy from RoboCop. Like, but like, he had to leave Detroit, right? and he's, laying low in Wisconsin, and he's got this, and he was like this real badass, but now all he can do is just kind of threaten to do it because he can't get in any trouble. I love that guy, though.
That's good.
Yeah, hilarious actor. Is there so you said you stream now more. Are you still a fan of going to the movies? And if so, like, is there a particular theater that you're very fond of that you used to go to as a kid, or that you like resonate with?
We didn't really have any good theaters as a kid. They were just kind of the multiplex sort of situations. And I grew up in like a little town north of Davenport. So like we would have to drive a half hour just to go to a movie. Or we'd go into like a mall, right? Like the first movie I really kind of remember seeing, I believe, was the Muppet movie. And I think it was like on a re-release, and it was at the Duck Creek Park Mall, which I don't even think exists anymore, you know, but that's kind of what we would do. And then, you know, so the movie theater was fun, but it just wasn't like you guys talk about, like you're in Chicago and you had the ability to actually, you know, either ride the L or walk down there or get there in different ways, or they'd go drop you off and there was other things to do. Our theater was in the middle of like nowhere. Like there was nothing around it. So you went to the theater. Like if your parents dropped you off and they weren't there afterwards, you were just sitting in a parking lot doing nothing. Like it sucked. But yeah, so I don't really have that sort of thing. But I will say, I live in Iowa City now. University of Iowa is here. This is a great little town, and it's got all the big city amenities, but it's tiny. And we have a thing called Film Scene, and it grew out of the Bijou Theater, which used to be the theater that was actually in the university. And now Film Scene is a 501c3 sort of thing, but they play a lot of independent films, and they play, you know, they play some local stuff if people have it. They do a lot of really cool stuff. They have a rooftop theater downtown. Like, so that's where I go now. And I actually really do love that because I can just walk down there and go take in a movie. In fact, my anniversary was 2 weeks ago. And just so happened they were showing the Before trilogy.
Oh.
Right? So Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, Before Midnight. Well, I mean, those movies like literally hit me and my wife like perfectly. We were in 1995, we were 19 years old and they were 20 and they were off doing this thing. And then they didn't see each other for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then they get back together, right? Well, that's literally what happened with me and my wife. Like we went to high school together. I went in the military. She went to school. We did all this stuff. We come back and, you know, it was like 10 years later we were married, or 9 years later we were married because we just got back together. And that was the same time that Before Sunset was coming out. And then, so we actually went to both of those movies. It was the first time either one of us had gotten to see them in a theater, and it was down there at the Film Scene. So that was really cool. And then, we skipped Before Midnight though, because spoiler alert for like a, you know, 10, 20-year-old movie. That's the one where like things go badly. So for my anniversary, I was like, we're not going to see that one. We're going to watch the two where everything is wonderful and you know, they're really happy to be together and all that stuff. And then we'll just skip that one. We'll watch that sometime in the dark, you know, winter nights or something.
So good.
Awesome. Well, happy anniversary to you and Mrs. Cott.
Yeah.
So, my man, we can start going into this film. The film that you chose today is Iron Man 2. A little background about Iron Man 2. It was directed by Jon Favreau, who also directed Chef, Swingers, and Elf. The film stars Robert Downey Jr., Mickey Rourke, Gwyneth Paltrow, Scarlett Johansson, and Sam Rockwell. This film had a box office of $623 million worldwide and on a budget of $200 million. So first things first, Mr. Cotton, why did you choose this film?
All right. So in the pantheon of the MCU, and we're talking, and when I talk about the MCU, anytime I say anything, it's going to be Endgame and before, because post that, then it starts to get a little wobbly. But yeah, so the first run of the MCU, a lot of people saw this movie and decided that they didn't like it, which I was really floored by, because I saw this in the theater. I saw the first one. I've actually seen all of these movies in the theater through Endgame. And I remember, you know, going to Iron Man, great movie. Really enjoyed it. I went to Iron Man 2. And I was like, wow, this is actually a better movie because it wasn't like an origin story. I mean, that was like the first thing that sort of drew it to me, was that, I don't need any more origin stories. They're fine. You could do a lot of cool things with them, but it's still just an origin story. So I was happy to see something moving beyond that. And I was really excited about it. And then Iron Man 3 came out, and I went and saw that one. And I was like, man, this one is not good. And then all of a sudden, like I don't know how it came through. Probably through Twitter or whatever at that time, like people were saying like Iron Man 3 is this great movie. And I was like, wow, this is weird. I don't like Iron Man 3 at all. And I was like, no, Iron Man 2 is good. And everybody was like, what are you, a moron? Like Iron Man 2 is the worst one. And I was just like blown away. It was sort of because the original Iron Man 2008, right? So that's like the very, very early days. In fact, I just watched these, I said, and Tony Stark references MySpace in the movie right at the beginning when he's talking to the soldiers. They're getting a selfie. He's like, I want to see this on your MySpace, which I thought was hilarious. So we're talking, this is just before the social media really started to take off. So by the time Iron Man 3 came around, everybody was arguing about this stuff and making their opinions known. And I guess I just hadn't clocked it up to that point. And then I was just really surprised that this was considered a bad movie. And then I even I just searched Reddit for Iron Man 2 and like what people think about it now. And I was amazed. Like some people on Reddit like are saying it's the worst of the MCU movies except for Thor 2. They're like, it's Thor 2 is the worst, and then Iron Man 2. And I'm just like, so still to this day, how many ever years later, I'm still blown away. And by the way, I watched Thor 2 on a flight last year. And I think I disagree with them on that one too, because I kind of liked Thor 2. I hated Thor 1. Never liked Thor 1 ever. And Thor 2 is actually kind of good. So like I said, I always have the bad takes. And, but so I was really interested to see what the take still is. And that seems to be the idea. So like, and then I looked it up, like Yumper, you were talking about the box office, right? So the original Iron Man pulled 319 million domestically, and Iron Man 2 actually did worse domestically. It went to 312 million. So it's not a huge difference, but it did do worse. Even though it did better worldwide. So, worldwide, I think maybe people enjoy this movie a little bit more. But then Iron Man 3, 409 million domestically and 1.2 billion worldwide. So like people really did like this Iron Man 3 movie, and I did not. And so I don't know. And then of course I had to look up the ratings. The first Iron Man has 7.9. Iron Man 3 is a 7.1. And Iron Man 2 rating is 6.9, which is nice.
I think so. I remember when this film first came out. I was very excited about it. Reasons being is because it stars Mickey Rourke. I'm a huge Mickey Rourke fan. I loved him in Angel Heart, and he was in Angel Heart. He was in Rumblefish, a book I read in high school, and then he was the motorcycle boy in that film. He was in like movies like Homeboy, Last Outlaw show I watched, a TV movie I watched, and then this is when he got his comeuppance. He was getting his resurrection of his career because he fell off, and then he did The Wrestler, and then he started getting bigger roles like doing in Ivan in Iron Man, and then he went on to do The Expendables and the other film he did, The Follow, which he did after that. So he was actually doing bigger roles. So I was excited to see this. Also, I'm a huge fan of Robert Downey Jr. Love his work. So when I went to go see this film, like I was very, very excited to see it, and I thought the trailer was awesome. So I was very hyped to see this film when it came out. What about you?
I'm listening to your voice, and I man, there's a but coming.
There's
a but coming. It feels like you're like, I was so excited, but
no, I'm just saying, like, before we go into like the negatives and good things of the film, I'm just saying, like, my personal feelings, just like I can see the anticipation of it. Tone, like, how did you feel, Tone, when you were heard about this film?
like, okay, before we go into it, I was not really a big what's the word I'm looking for? I seen all these movies at the theater, but I'd never like read the comics or anything. So I'm just looking for a good action movie, and going into this movie, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Is just good action, and yeah.
Yeah. Now, so Tony, would you consider this? So like you're not into like the whole comic book level of it, but would you consider this one of the worst MCU movies?
I'm gonna tell you, I was actually glad when you reached out for this, because until I came into some of this newer circle of people that I met, I hadn't heard the hate for this movie. Me and my friends liked it quite a lot, and I think you brought up Mickey Rourke, but that's not where I was looking. This is where I always look in this movie.
Absolutely.
Sam Rockwell. Honestly, to this day, when you just said he wanted to talk Iron Man 2, immediately that scene with him dancing, I laughed. Me and my brother-in-law never laughed so hard, because it was just such a great. I love sleazy bad guys who try to like put one over on people, and I think he nailed that part.
Oh, he absolutely did. I totally agree. And again, that's one of the things that I think in this movie puts it so like above the other two. I still think Iron Man 1 is a good movie. It's not like it's way better than that movie, but I just rewatchability, right? If you're just talking about that, like I think Iron Man 2 is more rewatchable than the original Iron Man because Sam Rockwell. I mean, he's great in this movie. Like the dancing and the goofy stuff that he does. And I was always amazed that they didn't bring him back. Like, of the villains that they've had in the MCU, they kill them all, which is insane. But they could have brought him back, because he's not so much a villain in this movie as he is just a criminal, right? Like he's kind of a bad guy, but he's not like anti Iron Man, like I have to kill Iron Man or do any of this. He's just he's a weapons dealer for the government, and he was below Stark Industries, and when they bowed out because Tony Stark didn't want to do weapons anymore, he got all those contracts, and he's just trying to like do this, but he's not as good as Tony Stark. So it's more of like this jealousy, and then he's willing to break the law by bringing in Mickey Rourke as Ivan Vanko to, build some of these things for him. And so they totally could have used him again. I don't know why they didn't. He's amazing.
Like back to part 3. I mean, I think Mickey Rourke could have been better in this movie. And I think, part 3, my biggest problem with part 3 is I was really thinking Ben Kingsley was who I was working with in this movie going into it. And I was really disappointed that that's not who it ended up being. It was somebody else, but this is my favorite of the Iron Mans. I like part 1 because of Jeff Bridges. I think he does a great job, but
See, now these are some of my notes that I had, and I think that the Iron Man 2 villains are better. I like, Sam Rockwell, and I think Mickey Rourke wasn't like, his performance is odd, right? Like, but he was going for something there, and it was enjoyable. I don't know. I kind of enjoyed it. You don't get to know much about him. Like, he's really kind of just weird, but the thing is, he actually had a motivation like this, and for me, it always comes English major, I guess. It always comes down to story, right? You can have crap special effects. You can have cheesy dialogue. You can have whatever. As long as the story holds up, and within the story, as long as you abide by the rules you set up for your story, I will forget the real world. And just as long as you stick to your own rules that you put in the story. And, in the first 2 movies, I think did that. And I think the third one just did not. But, you're saying Jeff Bridges, in the first Iron Man, I'm sorry. I just didn't. I don't see him as like such a bad guy. Like he didn't pull that off as well. And of course, I literally just saw like the dude. I'm watching the dude be a tough guy out there, and again, what's his motivation, right? Like, what is he just out of the blue? We find out that he hires the 10 Rings, which, by the way, this gets into comic stuff. The 10 Rings is like a major Marvel criminal organization, and they use them in the very first Iron Man. And you're like, oh, this is going to be cool. Except for they are nothing. They're just like a vaguely racist Middle Eastern terrorist organization who just, are just cannon fodder for everyone who wants to kill them. Like, that's all it is. And you find out that Obadiah Stane, by the way, that's the name, and that's just an amazing name. I did like the name. Jeff Bridges' character just decided to hire them to kill Tony for what? Like, but we don't know why.
See, I guess when you say all that, that makes sense. See, I'm thinking of just it being Jeff Bridges is cool and he's in this movie. But when you split all that other stuff, yeah, you're right.
No, and I don't think Jeff Bridges did like a bad job.
No,
acting. It's like two things can be true at the same time. It wasn't a great role.
Back to the first Thor. I mean, I think that there is like I don't like those origin first movies like you mentioned. I like getting. That's why I like Aliens more than I like Alien, because it gets right to the action right away, and I don't have to like, well, this is why we're here, that. But you're right. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying about that first movie.
Yeah, I just like the motivations. Plus, Iron Man 2 introduces us to Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow. You get Don Cheadle replacing Terrence Johnson, which, by the way,
Howard.
Oh, yeah. Don Cheadle, Terrence Howard. Yeah, that's right. Terrence Howard was Rhodey in the first one, and then he wanted to do something else. He's a great actor and everything. I just so much prefer Don Cheadle's take on it better. But he's War Machine. Like, he shows up. So, like, we get 2 more superheroes. They're building this thing out. We get a little bit more Nick Fury in this one. And they're sort of building these things out a little bit more without like beating you over the head with this is who this is. And this is, and I really just enjoyed that. Like it felt like they're just bringing these people in. And if you have no clue that Scarlett Johansson is Black Widow, that's like a surprise in the movie if you go in cold, because she's just like a legal person and is kind of shady. And so you think maybe she's a bad guy, but she's Black Widow. No, so like, yeah, for that, so that's one of the things that I really liked about it. In the first one, you just get, the one guy who somehow with this mega billion corporation can't improve on Tony Stark's design that he built in a cave somewhere in the desert. Like, he just builds that exact same thing. And then they go, while Tony Stark goes back and makes like 1,000,000% better version of what he did. And so I was just like, wow, like this guy isn't all that good. And then you get into the third one, and then those guys, look, again, they bring back 10 Rings, right? You have Ben Kingsley as the Mandarin, and I was with you. I thought that was awesome. Ben Kingsley was great as the Mandarin. But I will say, while I did not like the story change where he becomes not the Mandarin and he's just an actor, I hated that twist.
Yeah.
But Ben Kingsley was amazing in that role. He's one of the best things in the movie.
Yes, you're right.
I personally did not like Iron Man 3. And
it's
that's
a
the
mess.
reason why.
If you go back and watch, the criminals have no motivation for anything that they're doing. And the thing that they actually do want to get, what they're doing to get it doesn't make any sense about how you would get to that. Like, they're having these terrorist bombs all over the place, which are humans somehow. But They're doing that so that they can ultimately someday kill the president to put the vice president in charge, so that then the vice president will let them continue experimenting with this drug that is kind of making super. It's like, wait, but why are you doing the whole 10 rings thing and the Mandarin thing? Like, you don't have to do all this stuff. Like, you could literally just go to another country. Like, just,
Yeah,
I don't know. Like,
I think there was just too much going on in the story for that one.
Yeah.
In terms of this film, the second Iron Man, we talked about the positives in this film that are overlooked. Like you guys said, Sam Rockwell. What are some of the negatives in this film, Cotton, that you think are just overblown?
Well, I mean, we talked a little bit about it. Mickey Rourke. I think a lot of people don't like what Mickey Rourke was doing in this movie, and I think there are people out there that don't like what Sam Rockwell was doing as well. Like, they were doing, to me, they were doing very interesting things. Right? They were fun to watch, and they were the bad guys, and that's really kind of hard to do. Is to be a bad guy and actually be like, unless they're just so bad they're horrible, right? Like, those bad guys are good, but outside of that, it's like you kind of don't hate Sam Rockwell, and then Ivan Vanko, he's the true supervillain in the movie, and he's smarter than Rockwell, and he's totally using him, and so that's sort of an interesting thing. But yeah, people just don't really like the idea, I think they don't like the way that they were portraying those characters. And I think another thing I've seen, people didn't like changing out Terrence Howard for Don Cheadle. And I don't know why. Whatever. People, you know how people get, right? Like, oh, you can't have a new Batman. You can't have a new Iron Man. Everybody's got to be the same. It's like, nah, not really. Like, it's the comics. Everybody draws it. Every artist is a different art style.
I think in terms of these, so superhero films suffer from the same issues that I would say the Star Wars universe suffers from. You have such dedicated fans that just can't enjoy something that is a little bit different. If it goes against the grain in terms of how the comic is supposed to perfectly be done, then people are against that. Some people like innovation of doing something different. One of the films that we're going to talk about tonight, like, I love the ending, how it was done instead of the book. But people, I think there's those hardcore fans, and not all of them, but there's hardcore fans that push back on that, and they give, like, for perfect example, She-Hulk. I read some of the She-Hulk comics. I was never really a big comic person, but I read some of them. I know she breaks the fourth wall in it, kind of like a la Deadpool.
Yeah.
That show wasn't bad to me, but people were giving it, I saw were like bombing it horribly. I think that's kind of what they did with Iron Man 2 here. Mickey Rourke plays an eccentric character. Mickey Rourke is an eccentric person. He's, in general, have you ever heard the guy talk?
Oh yeah.
So,
like you were saying, you talked about some of his early roles. Mickey Rourke was a phenomenal actor. Like, people really thought he was going to be like the next greatest actor ever, right? And then, like you said, he's eccentric, and I think he got into like the weightlifting, and then he did some plastic surgery that didn't work for him.
Boxing.
Oh, was it boxing?
Yeah, he did plastic surgery, but he actually used to box, and he went back to boxing, and he got knocked out, and he got pretty jacked up in the facial department because he was older.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, so that's why he had to get plastic surgery, and that's kind of like killed his career. Roxy's about to go see Deadpool versus Wolverine. Have fun, Rox. Let us know how it is.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
But in terms of Terrence Howard, the reason he didn't come back was because he did not get along with Jon Favreau. In terms of Jon Favreau was just not happy with the way he was performing in the first Iron Man, so he signed a 3-picture deal with Marvel, the company that was doing the Iron Man films. But like I said, his performance wasn't up to par with what Jon Favreau wanted, so Jon Favreau cut his scenes in this film. Well, the studio saw that and like, okay, well, you're in limited amounts of scenes. We want to cut your salary by 80%.
Yeah,
and
that was
he
it.
and he didn't like it, so he left. I mean, he also has issues with Robert Downey Jr. He says Robert Downey Jr. didn't back him up. Terrence Howard's kind of out there these days, but you know, and then they actually asked Cheeto, "Do you want to do this?" And they only gave him 10 minutes to respond yes or no.
Ooh.
Oh wow. Well, he made the right choice. He's
Sure
been
did.
in a lot of them.
Yeah. So yeah, that was the issue with Terrence Howard not wanting to do this film. You know, Sam Rockwell accepted the role without even reading the script. I love Sam Rockwell. I think he does a great job in this film. Just to give my outlook of it, I think this film, in terms of the three Ironmans, will probably be my second favorite Iron Man. I like the first one because it's the first superhero movies that I saw was actually done well. I'm a huge fan of Robert Downey Jr. and I love the fact that everybody thought he was gonna suck as Tony Stark, and he blew it out of the water for me. He's the best part of the Marvel the Marvel era of films, in my opinion. That character. But this film, I don't understand the hate it gets. I thought Rourke was great. Rockwell was great. It had a story that flowed. It had the story of him being sick. So it gave extra little subplots that made sense. The first one, yes, the villain wasn't that great, but of course, that's my personal opinion. It's my favorite. But this one had everything that I think is better than Part 3. So if I had to rank them, like you were asking us earlier, it'd be 1, 2, and 3. 3, I think, was just all over the place. And I think it was a cash grab. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think so. I think Shane Black took over the directing on that one instead of Jon Favreau, and I think he agrees with you. He loves Tony Stark because Tony Stark. That's Tony Stark 1 versus Iron Man 3. Like, he's barely in the costume. He's running around, and I'm okay with that. All 3 movies, he spends a ton of time outside of the costume, but in 3, he's like fighting and running around and doing all this stuff sort of without the costume, and he. And you're just kind of like, but this is Iron Man. Like, I want to see Iron Man go out there and fight these dudes. And, I don't know. He is great. Like I say, I agree with you. I think Robert Downey Jr. is great. They built the entire MCU on his back, basically, because all the other guys were so much less known when they came in. They had a little bit under their belt, but he was the first big swing. Everybody knew him and had sort of bad taste in their mouth about things that he had done when he was younger and getting in trouble with the law and drugs and stuff like that. And so when he came out and he did a really good job, and everybody was like, oh yeah, we remember this guy was a really good actor. Like, that kind of set everybody up to the point that now that Marvel has fallen off, now they're talking about bringing Robert Downey Jr. back. They're just like, the only thing that can save us is Robert Downey Jr. doing Tony Stark or Doctor Doom or whatever they want to do with him now.
And he's actually come out and said that, at first, I remember he was on Joe Rogan's podcast. He said that he doesn't know if he wants to come back because he doesn't know how people are going to, like, he died, how people are going to, take him back. And Joe Rogan had actually a smart point, which is kind of rare for him, but he said, no, man, people love you in the role. They'll welcome you back. And now he's seeing that people are calling for him to come back. Just to give a little background, he was only paid $2 million for his role in this, which is a lot of money to us. But in terms of a big production like this and an actor with the leading role, he should have got more. And I think at the end in Endgame, which is what he carried, I think he made over the back end, he made $75 million for everything. So he's made bank doing this, and he has built the Marvel franchise on his back, and they built it off his back. And I would like to see him back. I mean, what about you, Tom? Would you want to see him back in the franchises?
It's like Cotton said, it depends on the story. The story needs to flow. It needs to be solid. I don't want someone just coming back for the sake of him being back. If it's anything like Iron Man 3, no.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, Tony. It's all about the story. And the great thing about the comics and the comic book universe is you can literally bring anybody back anytime. I mean, they brought Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield back in Spider-Man, and they're not even part of the MCU. You know, like they're able to do any of that in the comics because the comics have already set all of that up. And now that they've followed that to lesser, you know, maybe more or less well done degrees of the multiverse stuff that they've done, but at least it's out there. And the fact that it's out there, you can bring any of these guys back. And I don't know, I was listening to a podcast the other day and they were talking about possibly Tony Stark coming back, but being Doctor Doom, because it's sort of the same like costume idea, but Doctor Doom would be like the negative of the positive that is Iron Man, you know, so it would be kind of interesting to see that. And if they did something like that, Robert Downey Jr. is going to be able to play the same character, but in a different way. And I think that'd be really cool to see. Again, as long as this story can set up the rules to the point that it makes sense and then don't break those rules later. That's, like I say, that's the one thing that takes me out of a movie is when they're like, guns don't work in this movie. And then later 4 people get shot. And you're just like, wait a second. That doesn't make any sense. Like, I'll go with anything, any rule that you set out for me at the beginning of the movie. Just don't break that rule later.
That's a great point, and I totally get what you're saying in terms of the realm of the universe. To put this in closing, I saw Iron Man 2. I guess we will all agree is not a bad movie, right?
No.
Yeah, I personally go 2, 1, 3 in those 3 in my rankings.
What about you, Tom? What will you rank them?
The same thing, 2, 1, 3. But I do understand your sentiment for number 1. I mean, I could go 1, 2, 3. You know, I 1 and 2, I enjoyed both the same amount. I think when I was at the theater, I just like Sam Rockwell gets that just a little bit more.
Okay,
yeah, I think they're both like actually both very good movies. Then it just comes down to like a preference. Like I don't. Yeah. It's hard for me to say, oh, this is objectively a worse movie than the other one. It's just my preference. And again, it's Sam Rockwell, it's Mickey Rourke, and if you don't buy into those 2 guys, then yeah, you're probably not going to like that movie too much.
Totally agree. In terms of just looking at phase 1, 2, and 3, I think they're in phase 4 now, if I'm not mistaken. In terms of the Marvel films, which, in you guys' opinion, is the worst Marvel film? I'll start with you, Cotton.
Oh man, that's tough. I'm a Thor hater. And Thor 1. Like the other Thor movies, I've actually liked all the 3 other ones that they did, but that Thor 1 was really hard for me. But that being said, it's probably, I haven't seen that one forever, but it might be better than like Doctor Strange 2 or I really did not like Far From Home, or not Far From Home. Wait, which one? What was the third Spider-Man movie? The one where they did actually bring back Tobey Maguire and all that stuff? Again, hot take. Everyone loved that movie. I hated it. I'll never watch it again. Like, there's just nothing about that movie that I thought was any good at all. Like, it was... And again, the reason being, I believe that they broke the rules that Doctor Strange had set up. He was kind of this dude that, you know, knew what he was doing. And then all of a sudden, like, Spider-Man shows up and he's like, hey, would you mind just, like, changing it? Oh, sure, I'll do that. And then, like, for no reason at all. Like, there's no motivation behind what any of them are doing. He just goes ahead and messes with everything and creates these big problems within the multiverses. And that's the part that I hated about it. Like, once they got there, and that's early in the movie, then I'm like, well, I'm out. Like, what am I supposed to do now? Like, the rest of this, there's nothing you can do until you fix that part. So, yeah, so I don't know. Those could be, yeah, I think maybe, you know what, I'll hang my hat on it. The third Spider-Man movie, whatever that one was called. Far From Home.
No Way Home.
No Way Home. Yeah. No Way Home. Yep. that's a bad one for me.
What about you, Tone?
Iron Man 3.
It is bad, man.
I mean, it's the one I think about leaving the theater and just being like, what was that? Did not like that twist. I just think it was really bad writing. Shane Black's a great writer. I just did not think that was any good writing. But could just be an opinion.
But yeah, and it totally, for the second time, it's amazing that they did the 10 rings in the first movie and in the third movie. And in both of the movies, they just made it as if they were like idiots or whatever, and they couldn't do it. And then to make it even worse, they bring the 10 rings back with Shang-Chi. And they actually tell you, because by the time you're done with Iron Man 3, you're like, the 10 rings are just nothing. Like, what are they doing? Like they just invented something that doesn't make any sense and it's not a real thing. And then they make a whole movie about it. And you're like, wait a second. If the 10 rings are that damn great, why is Iron Man 1 and 3 making them seem like bumbling idiots? Like,
that's funny.
Not to mention the 10 rings in Iron Man 1 and 3 are like Middle Eastern, right? But when Shang-Chi, they're Asian. They're not even in the same part of the country. Like, none of that makes any sense. And so if you know nothing about the comics at all, it doesn't make any sense at all, because like you probably, because it's been like 15 years between the movies, you probably don't remember that the 10 rings were even part of those Iron Man movies. But if you did, you're like, wait a second. They're doing is Iron Man going to be in this? And of course he's not in it because the 10 rings weren't. Yeah, I don't know, man.
So I knew that 10 rings was building up to a cotton rant, because when you first were saying about it, I could tell it's like it's gonna eventually pop off, and I was just enjoying that little rant even on the 10 rings there. For me personally, I did not like the first Captain America. I thought it dragged a little bit too much. Hugo Weaving, I think, is an excellent character actor and excellent actor in his own right. I just don't like that character. Chris Evans is awesome. I hate the Captain American character in all the movies. I just can't stand him.
Yeah. I also think that was one of the weaker of the Marvel movies. It's again, it's an origin story, which I just, at this point, origin stories just don't do a lot for me. But again, the villain, if you really want to have a good like superhero movie, a Star Wars movie, something like, you got to have a good villain and you got to build that villain. Hugo Weaving could have been amazing, but what did Red Skull do? Like, Red Skull shows up you don't even know he's Red Skull until like his eyeball moves or something. Like, he was crazy. Like, it was just like, Red Skull is a great character in the comics and has all this, and he stands in for, the Nazis and fascism, all that stuff. And I mean, again, they just killed him. They used him for like 10 minutes and they killed him. It's like, well, okay. They brought him back as like the ghost of death or something in the Endgame movies, which was interesting, but again, still not using the character. Like, he could have been the last ghost in A Christmas Carol, pointing, go to the cliff and die.
Yeah, that's a reason Weaving's dropped out. For one, he didn't like being in the makeup. It took a lot out of him to do the makeup, and he just didn't like the story. And he didn't know if he wanted us to stay on for another big franchise that he wasn't really into. I mean, the guy was in The Matrix, and then he did Lord of the Rings. I mean, so he's got that pedigree, but if he didn't like it, that's, to me, tells me that that's why the movie sucks. Because if he didn't like it, I know I didn't like it.
Well, he also did another amazing comic book movie, and I don't know if it's going to be in your list. V for Vendetta. Is that in one of you guys' list?
No, not.
Oh, man. Like, Hugo Weaving as V, excellent. And in that movie, like, you don't know that's Hugo Weaving. He wears a mask the entire time. It could have been anyone, but that was, but yeah, that's a great comic book movie that does well in regards to the book as well. And Hugo Weaving was amazing in it, which is kind of a tough thing to pull off when you're wearing a mask with no way to emote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just shows how great of an actor he is.
Yeah, and he's that great of an actor, and yet when they use him as Red Skull, they're like, "Why don't you just be Red Skull for about 4 minutes, and then we're gonna kill you?"
Yeah, that's why I don't know. I could rant about this. I've done it before. I just don't like the film. I just don't like. Well, the thing is, it's not even him. I just don't like the Steve Rogers character. I think he's an asshole. I really do. I think it's just. I mean, you've heard me like when we did the people who we think are like bad guys. Like he was one of my picks because I think he holds Tony's parents' death away from them to protect Bucky, and he's supposed to be like this righteous dude, but only works in his favor. Like that's why I'm like he's an asshole. He's no better than it. And
he's a perfect stand-in for the American government.
Yeah. That's why I'm like I don't like that. So I didn't like him. Like I like Chris Evans. I just don't like the character. Yeah. And I know people are always like, oh no, you're against Kevin. No, he sucks. Like the way they portray him in the films, he sucks. And then from what I was told by people who read the comics, he's kind of an asshole in those too. So.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And I think the best parts about the Captain America movie is when they point out how he's being an asshole, like because he doesn't like use bad language, and because he's like super old, he doesn't know any of the references that they use. Those are the best parts. Like I love when they're kind of like busting his balls.
Yeah, about his uniform being smelly and shit. Like
that's the best part. Now I will say, the second Captain America movie was excellent. That's the one with Robert Redford, because the story, like it doesn't matter who your characters are. In that, because they put a good story behind it. And, and I totally understand your take with the whole Bucky thing, but that was a great storyline that those guys went through. And then to turn everything on its head for the entire like movie universe. Yeah. I would say the worst thing about that movie is that like moving forward, the rest of the movies never really dealt with the whole fallout from how big of a shift that should have been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just I think the writing got worse as it went on.
Yeah, and then the Captain America Civil War was, I mean, you can kind of forgive anything in that movie just because you get to see them all fight at the end, and you get to see Spider-Man. That's the first time he shows up, and
yeah. But I know we ranted a lot about this film and other stuff. But Cotton, thank you so much for coming on. Where can everybody find you at?
I'm on the Son Ranto show every week. We usually do Thursdays. I think we're doing Wednesday next week. You find that. You can just search Son Ranto on YouTube's if you want to find it. Or if you're looking in the podcatchers, look for Bleacher Bunch. We have the Bleacher Bunch network. That has the Son Ranto show. That's where you also can hear my Baseball Rabbit Hole show. That's the one I do by myself. And the tagline is that I ask questions of the internet and then I follow the rabbit holes that they open. And they open some pretty interesting, weird things sometimes. And I like that one. That Yumper, you've heard that one. It's a baseball history podcast. And a lot of you people out there are Sox fans. I know I do a whole episode, I think, on Bill Veeck, starting with him with the Cubs. Like Bill Veeck is Chicago baseball and really should be more well regarded throughout both fan bases. But then, and then I did the whole one about all the team names or the places where they started, right? So like the Cincinnati Reds became the Boston Red Sox, became Well, and then they stayed there, right? So you think, oh, but the Cincinnati Reds became the Cincinnati Reds. Well, no, they didn't. That's a completely different team. And so it's like stuff like that. It's like the Washington Senators. Oh, well, they're the Texas Rangers now. Yeah, that's true. But they're also the Minnesota Twins because the Senators came both the Rangers and the Twins. So if that kind of stuff like is interesting to you, check out the Bleacher Bunch network. Those things pop up on there. And then we also have if you happen to like the Cubs PS Plus podcast, my friend Mike Waller does his show and he tries to get a little more in depth about all the problems that the Cubs have right now. We don't have as many problems as the White Sox, but I mean, I think we're sharing a cab.
Yes.
We match up on both ends of the red line for a reason.
For sure. Thanks so much, Cotton, for coming on. Be sure to follow him over at the Son Ranto Show and the Inside the Rabbit Hole, Baseball Rabbit Hole. Both great pods. Like I said, Cotton, like I described to Tony, the Son Ranto Show, it's basically the Cubs version of the 108 that we have on the Sox side. Great.
It's just fans talking and talking too long many times. Like, I mean, I don't know, Tony, you don't know me. Yumper, you had to have known this was going to take a long time. You have not had an indefensive. We're hitting almost an hour 10 here.
It's all good, my man. That's why I wanted to have you on. Again, you were Cotton, to be honest, like I really, really appreciate you supporting the show. You know, you reached out when we first did our first episode, and you still, we go back and forth through messages to see, what you like, and I really appreciate that, my man. I'm glad I could make something that you'd like to listen to. Yeah,
well, I mean, you too. You've been out there with the Son Ranto crew for a long time on the internet, at least. But yeah, this is a good show. Like, I really enjoyed it. And I've enjoyed all the different iterations of it. And it's another long one. I happen to like long podcasts. I love when you just keep going and just get back and forth on things. And so that's fun. So cool.
For sure, man. Thank you so much.
I appreciate being on, guys, and keep it up. I can't wait to hear the rest of this tomorrow because I just don't watch these things on YouTube.
It's all good, man. All good.
Cool. Take it easy, guys.
Take it easy, man. The great Michael Cotton. I've been following the Son Ranto Show for maybe 5 years now, 6 years. They've been going strong, I think, for almost over 10. I know for sure. Danny Rocket, who does his own parody songs, they just crack me up. I love Danny. They have a new co-host, an Infield Fly Girl. I've heard her.
She did a good job last night. Like I said, watch. That's why I was like, you said two guys, and I was like, this girl. Yeah, this is the show. Because then,
yeah. And Cotton, like I know Cotton went long, but Cotton cracks me up just when he gets in the rants. It's good time. That's why I love it. And he's a guy who can argue. That's why I want to see when I was watching to see your reaction when he started going off on the 10 rings. That's why I started cracking up.
I know, it was good.
But as the Iron Man 2 in defense of with the great Michael Cotton, Tone, let's just go straight into the meat and potatoes of the show. We're going to talk superhero films. We got 10 to go through. Let's go into our first film, my friend.
Let's do it.
1990s Darkman, directed by Sam Raimi, who also did the Spider-Man trilogy, the Evil Dead trilogy. He did Drag Me to Hell. He also did Oz the Great and Powerful. The film stars Liam Neeson, Frances McDormand, Larry Drake, and Colin Frills. It had a box office of $48 million on a budget of $14 million. Now, this is a film that's kind of obscure, doesn't really get brought up a lot when we talk superhero films. And it's one of my picks. Main reason, Sam Raimi. I love Sam Raimi. And the second reason is this is a short story that Sam Raimi had written as a homage to Universal horror films in the 1930s. Now, Tony, I love horror. I know you love horror. I love the 30 horror films from Universal and the other ones that came out later, through the 40s and 50s. I'm a sucker for them. this brought me back a lot of nostalgia in terms of what he was going for in terms of the feel. I also like the story that the guy is creating synthetic skin. It kind of gives me like a different type of superhero. He doesn't have super powers, but he can also camouflage himself into certain ways to take over people. And I love, the Sam Raimi touch of the gore in the film. Uh, and Larry Drake as the villain is awesome. So that's why I picked this one. What do you think about this one?
Two things. Larry Drake is amazing as the villain. Larry Drake is awesome in a couple different things, but awesome as the villain. Sam Raimi. I mean, it's cool to look back and see this is one of his movies.
And the Darkman certainly has a number of special effects. There's animation, there's blue screen compositing, there's intravision, a matting process. There is a lot of stunt work.
Pretty cool, this whole interview. Before that, he goes into exactly what Yumper was talking about that old 1930s horror characters that went into this. Just really awesome. When it first came out, I was there, I think it was 10, 11 again. Very unique superhero movie. When you look at all the way superhero movies are right now, I thought it was definitely a good pick that you picked.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, the Coen brothers actually did an uncredited rewrite of the script, which I thought was crazy. I didn't know that Francis McDormand is actually married to one of the Coen brothers. So that kind of put them in hand to see with the script rewrite. And then just looking at the people who were actually considered for this role, you had Julia Roberts was almost cast as Julie, but she got replaced when she got Pretty Woman, which exploded her career, so it lucked out for her. Demi Moore was almost cast as her, Bridget Fonda, Gina Davis, Smelly Griffin, Kelly Lynch, Virginia Madsen were all, up there. Bill Paxton wanted to play Peyton Westlake, which is the main character that Liam Neeson plays. And when he couldn't get it done, they couldn't come to terms. When Neeson got the role, Paxton was so angry he didn't speak to him for a couple months because he wanted it so bad. It's an eccentric role, and Neeson does it perfectly. He can play eccentric characters. It's just one of those films that I could watch it today and still be mesmerized by like the way it's shot, the way it still looks. It still holds up today, in my opinion.
Now, though they're not as good, any movie that is able to spawn sequels, that is able to show you that the first one was good enough to say, hey, even though Die Darkman Die isn't as good as the first one or all of that, it's still cool. Like again, this is a comic book that I would like to go and find if there is comic on this. I don't know if they ever is. If they do, it would be interesting to look at.
I don't know if they do. They probably might do side comics
like something
again.
like from the movie, like when it came out, like maybe something like a 1 or 2 comic. I don't know.
Yeah, there is one. 1993. There is a Darkman comic. So this all spawned from the mind of Sam Raimi and now became a comic. That's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen Darkman, watch the original released in 1990 and tell me what you think about it. Like it's one of my favorite superhero films. But moving on, my man, we're gonna go into one of yours.
That fucking rocked. Who are you? I'm Kick-Ass.
2010's Kick-Ass, directed by Matthew Vaughn, who also directed X-Men First Class, the Kingsman trilogy, Layer Cake, and Stardust. The film stars Aaron Taylor Johnson, Nicolas Cage, Chloe Grace Moretz, and Christopher Mintz-Plasse. The film had a box office of $97 million and $39 million in video sales as well on a $30 million budget. Tell me why you picked this film.
Well, we're going to get to it next week. I'll go into how awesome Longlegs is, but Nicolas Cage is great in this movie. All the characters are great in this movie. I love Mark Strong as the bad guy. I like how it's very brutal for a movie that I wasn't expecting to be so brutal when I went into the movie theater. It's vulgar. I'm a fan of quite a few performances by Aaron Taylor Johnson, and this is one of those performances that I like a lot. And we've talked about Superbad on the show, and I just think Christopher Mintz-Plasse does a ridiculous job, and of course Chloe Grace Moretz. I just think it's it's different than every other kind of superhero I had seen at the time. I like it a lot. I like this one a lot.
Yeah, it's totally something different. Again, a superhero that doesn't have any powers. It's more of a vigilante. I like to look at this film as a Batman without the money.
There you go.
So that's the way I look at it. I just got a person that was fed up with what was going on this side, and they have people that are vigilantes that basically, take care of crime. Hit Girl and Big Daddy. I love the fact that Nicolas Cage's character's name is Big Daddy. That always makes me laugh.
It was a rough time for Nicolas Cage. I mean, this was the first time I saw him again on the screen after having a low period.
Yeah, totally. And the original comic was written by Mark Miller, and this film was actually a comic for the film. Basically, it wasn't something that had prior work to this. But Miller wrote the comic book, and he said he actually prefers the film version to his own comic, which is like that's a compliment of compliments if you think about it. The rights to the film version were sold before the comic series was even published. The first episode of the thing was published. So if the creator is saying he liked the film better than his own comic, that's a big compliment. Lots of action in this film. There's a lot of blood in this film. It's gory and and a lot of comedy. And some parts are like hard to watch too. I mean, the death of Big Daddy, tough one.
As a movie, I like this movie, but my father loved this movie. Like, I think he saw it 3 or 4 times in the theater. He would watch. But again, it's that mix of that. It's kind of got some of that 80s comedy in it. It's kind of real raunchy, as you said, lots of blood. I wish the sequel was as good as this one.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. The sequel, for one, didn't get a lot of publicity, and the reason being is because Jim Carrey. There was a lot of protests against the vigilante, message it was sending, and Jim Carrey kind of got into that and kind of felt like maybe I shouldn't be promoting violence. It was a different time, in the country, and which is cool, but it didn't get a lot of publicity like it should have, which kind of killed it. Also, it's not that great of a story as this one. This is kind of the origin story in this film. So this one is better than the sequel, but this one was a nice little start to maybe something that could have been a franchise with more. They've only released 2 due to the second one probably killing off its money making. They probably didn't want to have it make more money. I mean, make a more films. But the crazy thing is, Christopher Mintz or McLovin, he originally auditioned for the role of Kick-Ass, and I can't see him playing Kick-Ass. As Red Mist, I think he's better because he's this, the bratty kid.
Yeah.
But as Kick-Ass, I couldn't see him doing it. He'll always be known as McLovin to me, no matter what role he does.
That's true.
But great choice, Tony. Great film, a lot of action. Something that doesn't get talked about a lot when we talk superhero films.
Not at all.
You ready to move on to the next one, my man?
Let's do it.
Inhabitants of Peach Trees. This is Judge Dredd.
Let him talk.
In case you people have forgotten, this block operates under the same rules as the rest of the city. Mama is not the law. I am the law.
2012's Dredd, directed by Pete Travis, who also directed The Gunman, Vantage Point, and City of Tiny Lights. It stars Carl Urban, Olivia Thirlby, Lena Headey, and Jason Cope. The movie had a budget of $50 million with a box office of $41 million and $22 million in video sales. This is one of my picks. The reason I love this film so much is I grew up a big Stallone fan. I love Stallone, and when I first saw the first rendition of Dredd in the 90s, as you heard him say I am the law in that film in a more like serious badass tone, we got this.
The law! I never broke the law! I am the law! You betray the law!
Law! Mr. I am the law.
which is comedic now because I know Tony, me and you go back and forth with it a little bit. I am the law. But this film, I think, is what the idea of when you make a comic book, characters be grimy and edgy and badass. And I would take this film over the original Judge Dredd film with Stallone. Reason being, it stays closer to the material. People I know were going crazy when Stallone took off his helmet for the first film. In the comics, Dredd never takes off his helmet. I love the dystopian wasteland storyline of how they have judges that are actually like cops. They judge people before they go to jail. They sentence them right in there. It's a good concept. It's a cool concept in this futuristic world. I think this film is just badass when they go up. They're basically going up a tower. It kind of reminds me of the Bruce Lee film, Game of Death, where they go over the top of the tower. And it's the same thing in here. You got a big sci-fi element in it and action. Carl Urban is awesome as Dredd. Olivia Thirlby's awesome as his partner. Another gory film. Lena Headey's awesome as the villain. It's just really, really done very, very well. And it's unfortunate because there's been a lot of uproar and a lot of support for a sequel, and I don't think it's ever going to be made. It's kind of like in developmental hell, and the studio doesn't want to put much money into it. But I love this film. Tell them, what do you think about it?
I am not a fan of the Sly one, but I am a huge fan of this one. Really huge upgrade. But I'll be fair, my non-liking the Sly one's like from 96. So me liking cheesy things, I probably will like it now. So I'm going to rewatch it again. But this movie, it's really good. Honestly, I don't know why I start thinking of what's the one with Tom Cruise where he goes into the future. It's a newer one. We've talked about it.
Edge of Tomorrow?
Yeah, Edge of Tomorrow. Not that this is like that, but it's kind of cool. I like the futuristic vibes. I like how you said the Game of Death going up the hotel. I like Carl Urban. Honestly, we haven't talked about him ever on the show, but I could stand to tell you that I think those Star Trek remakes might be better than some of the Star Wars remakes. And he does a great job in those. And I think he really represented Judge Dredd well in this movie.
Yeah, and he kept a American accent for this film. Carl Urban is foreign. I thought he did a very good job. His mannerisms, again, like Cotton said earlier with Viggo Mortensen and having the mask over his face, and you can't really see him emoting what he's doing. You can see his mouth, but you can't see his eyes, and he does a great job of portraying, of relaying his emotions over to you throughout this film. I thought it was really well done. The character was done perfectly. It's a good homage to the comic book.
Agree. Definitely agree.
Yeah, I wish they would make a sequel, man, but I don't know.
It's hard when there's like an awesome movie and then the public just doesn't come out for it because they're just not going to up that money for the next one.
Yeah, that's why I'm I know not to go off on a little side. Like Furiosa didn't make a lot of money at the box office, and I'm hoping that maybe video sales or whatnot can boost it so they can see the sequel to that, continuing the story, because I really, really liked it. But I'm just hoping it doesn't go by the wayside, and I kind of think that's what happened with Dredd here. But moving on, my friend, let's go on to your next film.
No, you're not. You're not going anywhere until we get all this on the table, right? I will handle it. No. Did you hurt Noah? What did you do to him? He was my friend, and you just...
Brightburn, released in 2019, directed by David Yarovetsky, who did The Hive and Night Books. The film was actually written by Brian Gunn and Mark Gunn, who Brian Gunn is the brother of James Gunn from the he does Peacemaker. He also does the DC universe. He's in charge of the DC universe now. Suicide Squad. He's the head honcho over for DC. Guardians of the Galaxy, James Gunn. It stars Elizabeth Banks, David Denneman, Jackson A. Dunn, Jennifer Holland, and Emmy Hunter. The film had a box office of $33 million and $4 million in video sales on a budget of $6 million. Tone, tell me why you picked this one.
A long time ago, I could think of one situation. I was dating a girl and I was leaving the movie. Was it 3 week, third 10? What's the zombie one? Weeks later, the first one, 20 weeks later,
28 days later.
28 days later. And I get in the car, and I used to be somebody like you described Cotton, I would just go off on movies or I could fix them. This movie isn't a perfect movie, and I can come up with lots of different things to make this movie better. But the overall idea of it, when it came out in the trailer for it, I thought it had a really good advertising run. The movie's good too, but it's really cool to show the whole Superman spin, but more of in a horror type of way, because the movie does come across as there's some more of it's not a positive superhero movie.
Yeah, it's a horror superhero movie. This is like if Superman went rogue.
Mhm.
That's the way I look at it. If Superman, because he's a little, we're gonna peek behind the curtain a little bit of this film. He lands on Earth to a family who can't have kids, a wife and a husband, and he's in a spaceship, and they basically take him in, and he finds out he has super strength and he can fly, but he has a lot of anger issues, and we find out that his whole mission was to take over. Um, but it's kind of like a villain origin story, or if Superman became bad. I really like this film. It doesn't get, again, another film that does not get mentioned a lot. Uh, I love the fact that the guns were involved in it. Um, to me, it's visually pleasing.
Mhm.
And I really like Elizabeth Banks in this film. I thought she did a great job as the mom. Actually, all the mom, dad, and the child all did a great job. David Denneman, and then the kid who played Jackson A. Dunn, who played Brandon, did a great job in the film. It's creepy, and it kept me engaged the whole time. I rewatched this recently, and I liked it the first time, and I continue to like it this time. So this is a really good pick, Tone.
I like now it's another one where I don't know if we'll ever get a sequel from it, but I'm a big movie watcher to imagine what could be, or what is the future, what is the character. I like those type of ideas, and this movie just a lot of cool ideas for a movie that isn't like attached to a Marvel or a DC.
Yeah, and in terms of the sequel, when doing research for this film, James Gunn said a sequel was discussed, but will probably never be made due to the issue with the rights.
Yeah.
But another great story that was something different, and like Brandon Brayer is the character's name. His name follows the classic comic book convention of superheroes with alternate first and last names: Clark Kent, Peter Parker, Bruce Banner, etc. Bretton Bayer. I think in the Big Bang Theory, Raj goes through the whole thing of Wally West. He does all these things of how Stan Lee is obsessed with the names, the first and last names as with the same letter. But yeah, definitely a great pick, Tone. It's a good horror film. This is what I was thinking about putting on for the end of the month too. But on October, I had I had my maybes, and this was one that was on there too. So when I saw it, I laughed because you had two films. Well, this one I knew for sure, but the other one, when you did the what we watched, you have two films that were on my list.
I really appreciate that you send me the list first, because there's nothing that I'm ever going to see you pick and me go, oh, well, I want to pick it, because it just lets me fill in all of the other stuff that you didn't get to, which is cool. And this one, I'm like, I think you liked. I would think that you would like this one. It seems to be right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, and that's what I love about our show. Peeking behind the curtain of the show, that's what we do. Like, I'll send Tony the notes, usually day of or a couple days before, depending on how work's going that week. And also I write a crap load. But like, I'll send him, hey, these are my picks for the movie picks for the week, and I don't want you to tell me yours because I'd like to see what you got like for the week. The only reason I tell him his is so we don't watch the same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing when we do our lists. I send my 5 first, and then he sends me his 5.
And honestly, you send me your 5, and I don't have anything pre-planned. Like, I pick them right there on the spot. So these movies are like what I'm actually thinking about in that moment, which I think is to be cool.
Yeah, this is a film that, like, when I saw this, I'm like, oh man, I haven't seen that film in a while. That's why I went back and watched it. So if you haven't seen, like, you want to see a different type of superhero film that's more of a horror, like, kind of touch on it, Brightburn is right up your alley. But you ready to move on, my man?
Let's do it.
All right, let's move on to our next film.
This is Constantine. John Constantine. Asshole.
2005's Constantine, directed by Francis Lawrence, who also did the Hunger Games series of Red Sparrow and Water of Elephants. The film stars Keanu Reeves, Rachel Weisz, Diman Hasu, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, and Shia LaBeouf. Movie had a box office of 230 million on a budget of 100 million. This was one of my picks. I remember seeing this film trailer. Came out around Christmas time in 2005. I remember seeing it the trailer for it, and I was mesmerized by it to the point where I never read Hellblazer the comic, which is what this is based off. I actually bought the first 12 issues, minus the first one, because the first one's like $500, and I'm not gonna spend that for a comic book I'm not gonna read. And I actually have them, put away like in a nice area. To that's part of my comic book collection. I'm a huge fan of like the of horror. This film that deals with the supernatural and spiritual realm. I think Keanu Reeves is awesome in it. Shia LaBeouf as the comedic, these comedic little characters in there to make it a little lighthearted in certain ways. It's can be scary to some. It's action packed, and I think it follows the comic pretty well. Even though some of the characters have different types of relationships they would in the comic. Peter Stormare, who does the devil at the end, Lucifer, I think is probably one of the best TV or movie devils there is in the business. And I saw a lot of movies with the devil in them, and I think he does an excellent job. And I've seen him like ranked on people's best portrayals, up there with Tim Curry and Viggo Mortensen. Just a great film that's creepy, and supposedly we might be getting a sequel. I don't know. Keanu Reeves has come out and said that there will be a sequel coming out, hopefully soon. What do you think about this one, film, Tone?
Peter Stormare, I mean, he's another Sam Rockwell. Sign me up with anything he's in. The other day, I was just watching. I'm on my Nick Cage kick. I watched 8mm. He's in that. But this movie's. I remember specifically coming home from Ball State for the weekend with a couple friends, and we drank cube of Keystone, 30 Keystones, 3 of us, and then went and seen this movie. And honestly, visually, crazily awesome. I mean, Keanu, man, he's just awesome, and great movie all around.
Yeah, I just love the lore of the film.
Yeah.
And I'm like I said, I'm a huge fan of Hellblazer, the comic book. I've actually had the comic app on my phone. I read through all of them. And I love the TV series with Matt Ryan, who does another like spin-off of the Constantine character. If you guys don't know, Constantine is actually from Liverpool, John Constantine. He actually has blonde hair, and he wears a brown trench coat. In this film, he's American, which is fine. I mean, they wanted to change the story a little bit. I think they changed the story enough to where it kind of plays tribute to the comic book, but it's its own little story. And I think they did a good job. Like I said, Keanu Reeves loves this role. It's one of his favorites. And on the Stephen Colbert show, they asked him what was a film that he wanted to get made, and he said he pushed for a sequel to be made. Now they're saying it's actually in the works. Like somebody picked it up. He's trying to get Francis Lawrence back to do the sequel, and hopefully it gets made, because I would love to see more of these made before Keanu gets too old.
Definitely. I mean, it's funny to see some of the people who they wanted for Constantine. Sadly didn't want to bring his name up, but it is his birthday today. Sadly, it's Kevin Spacey, who said they wanted him. I don't know why I start laughing when I just think of him. Or, I mean, maybe Mel Gibson in the 80s. Like if this movie was made in the 80s, I don't know if the Mel Gibson when the movie was made. But again, interesting. I always love those to imagine people in this role.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention Gavin Rossdale as Balthazar.
Oh, yes. That's what it was. That's what we were laughing super hard in the theater about. Yes, that's what it was. I forgot. Gavin Rossdale. Yes.
He Johnny, fresh meat, He overdoes it, but when I saw him, I'm like, holy shit, it's the guy from Bush.
That is.
Yeah, but I love this film. I turn it on. My brother loves it. My mom actually likes this film, but it's probably more for the Keanu Reeves aspect than anything. But I just like it. I still hold up today, and I'm still holding out hope that the sequel will be made soon.
I mean, if Keanu could bring, I mean, honestly, he's somebody who has brought back movies that I didn't think he'd ever bring back. You know what I mean? Especially with Bill and Ted. You know, no, who thought that he would make another one of them? So I think your hope could be good.
Yeah, hopefully, man.
He's got some interest. Honestly, when you get a second after the show, he's got some really interesting sounding, cool projects coming out. He's starring in a movie directed by Jonah Hill,
Mhm.
which is which again, you know, I like to see Keanu. I mean, he's can do a lot of different stuff.
I used to make fun of Keanu because he was always saddled with the Hawaiian or the stoner kind
Oh,
of
he
guy
was.
with Bill and
He was.
Ted.
He was.
But he is coming to his own. Like I used to call him Canoe. Cause just to like joke with them. I love him as an actor. I've always loved him, but we would just call him Canoe. And he's coming to his own. He's went from Dracula to Speed, Johnny Mnemonic, Chain Reaction. He's and then to other films. Street Kings is one of my favorite crime films. John Wick, of course. That whole series. He's a cash register after The Matrix and other films. He's everything he does. I enjoy for the most part. And he was in Cyberpunk, the video game, which I really liked.
Before we move on, what do you like better, Constantine or Bram Stoker's Dracula?
I like Constantine. I think Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola is good. I like Constantine because it's just shorter film.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I will for those who are now stepping outside and like the film or the in terms of film. If those who know me know I'm a big video game person. I used to watch AVGN. Have you heard of AVGN, Tone?
Yes.
Okay, so AVGN did he does bad video games. He's an angry video game nerd. He did a series for Halloween of vampire films, games, and one of them was Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it showed really bad scenes from the film when you died, and one of the scenes is basically Keanu going, and he says in the video in this review, he's like, I don't remember that from the film. He goes, where the hell is that? He goes, maybe it's from Bill and Ted, and it always cracks me up. So whenever I think of Bram Stoker's Dracula, I think of that like that grunt and then that line. Maybe it's from Bill or Ted.
That's good.
But yeah, I love Constantine.
That's awesome.
What about you?
Oh, great. I mean, Constantine's just a really awesome movie, and I would probably pick it as more of a I do like Bram Stoker's Dracula, but Gary Oldman is why I like that movie. Keanu's ridiculous in the movie, his hair. But again, I like where he is in his career. You got Winona Ryder. In this movie, this is kind of the start to seeing Keanu as more of just the Point Break Keanu. He's starting to expand. He's starting to get a little bit outside.
Yeah.
He hasn't been locked inside a house yet with Arnima Diamas. If you haven't seen Knock Knock yet, that's a really
that's where the two girls come to his house, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm waiting for Katie to go out of town. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, Katie.
Oh my goodness. Also Tilda Swanson's in this film. She's in the Doctor Strange films. She's actually plays the Archangel Gabriel in this film. Great job by her as well.
She does.
But let's move on, my friend, because I'm really excited about the next one you got.
God, how do you know Mike Shiner?
We share a vagina.
I think you want to do it? Mm-hmm. How do you know?
Because he told me he wanted to do it.
Jake, yes. Ask me if he sells tickets. All right, does he sell tickets? He sells a shitload of tickets. Okay. Now ask me if the theater critics love him. The theater critics love him. They want to spooge on him. Hey, Leslie.
Right on his face.
Everything for a reason, right? I think he'll come in this evening.
I'll call him and find out.
I'll call his agent.
2014's Birdman, directed by Alejandro G. Inarritu, who also did Beautiful, The Revenant, and Babel. He's a four-time Oscar winner. Starring Michael Keaton, Zach Galifianakis, Edward Norton, Andrea Riseborough, and Emma Stone. The film had a box office of $102 million with $8 million in video sales on a budget of $18 million. So, Mr. Burt, tell me why you picked this one, man.
I tried it for the show, always trying to think outside the box, and I don't. This is one that gets really outside the box on a superhero type of movie. But what I like about it is just Michael Keaton, because it's like, again, another guy who hadn't really been making movies a lot, up like starring in movies, is starring in this movie where he's going to play a Birdman, but we know him as Batman. So there's just all these lines running through the movie that makes the connections to, like, and all those other people you mentioned in the movie. It's funny, it's trippy, it's a lot of different things.
Yeah, and it's kind of, so I wouldn't really consider this a traditional superhero movie because it's not really a superhero movie. It's more of a dark comedy of what we think of superhero movies, and I really like this film. I think it's very, very well done. Hiratu is a great director. Michael Keaton. Anything with Michael Keaton, I love Michael Keaton. He is the best Batman in my opinion. I'm sorry. I know someone might disagree, but in my opinion, best Batman will always be Keaton. And he does a great job as a actor who played a superhero and that kind of got typecast into that. It's trying to reclaim his glory. But it's kind of a sleazeball himself. It's just a great story of how, you get fallen off that mountain. Those the job of fame of trying to get back to it. And it has a superhero build into it because he's known as the Birdman. As his alter ego superhero, and I think the casting is great. Zach Galifianakis really shows his acting chops in this film. He's funny, but he's his role is supposed to be serious. And anything with Edward Norton is great. And I thought Emma Stone was great in this film. This is a great pick, Tone.
I like the way again, the camera work when he's like floating outside and it like. Where you think he's like actually Birdman. Like there's just a lot of things that, again, as you stated, because of the character of Batman running through it's not a traditional one, but it's one that, if you are a fan of just Michael Keaton or his performance in Batman, I can't see why you wouldn't enjoy this.
Yeah, and it makes fun of method acting too. Mike Shiner, as he said in the film, the guy basically goes ape shit during a play and literally tries to do some bad things. George Clooney nipple suit forever. But yeah, it's just, I love it. It's just basically a person that's trying to become relevant again and just showing the trials and tribulations of it. One of my favorite parts is when he goes, out of it and he runs naked in Times Square. Well, not naked, but in his underwear. And Keaton actually did that with non-extra. So there were people walking around Times Square, saw Michael Keaton running in his tidy whities that were like, what the hell's going on? And he actually, did that for the role. And man, I wish Keaton would have won the Oscar for this film. I really do. The film won Best Oscar, Best Picture, and it won Best Director. I really wish he would have won it for this film. He was just masterful in this role. He was just awesome. I don't even know who won that year. I'm gonna check right now.
Just again, he went for it. He was like Mickey Rourke in The Wrestler. This was his wrestler, his coming back, and since this time, I mean, he is still staying around. It wasn't like he's this new Beetlejuice is going to be really good.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Now I know why I remember this so much, because this is a year that J.K. Simmons won Best Supporting Actor. The person who won for leading role was Eddie Raymond for the 30th birthday. But listen to this group of people he was up against. Birdman, Michael Keaton. Okay. Benedict Cumberbatch, The Imitation Game. Bradley Cooper for American Sniper, and a person that I don't know, like if Keaton wasn't going to win, I thought this person for sure was going to win, and that was Steve Carell in Foxcatcher.
Oh yeah, that was a great performance.
I don't know how Redmayne won that, and I didn't really like that film. But yeah, maybe it's because I'm more of a bias with Keaton and Carell, but I loved Keaton in this film. It's probably one, if not his best role.
Amazing.
Yeah, good one, man. Good, and it's kind of funny that we went to Ratu as the first director because he's part of a trio they call it Three Amigos, and in this next film we're to go to is his other friend.
Trying to attract them, not scare them off.
Yeah, well, some of us can't see in the dark, you fucking nipplehead. What am I supposed to do? Bifocals, Grandpa. Try to keep up.
Blade 2, directed by Guillermo del Toro, who also directed Hellboy 1 and 2, Pan's Labyrinth, The Shape of Water, Pinocchio, Nightmare Alley, Kronos, Mimic 1 and 2, and is a member of the Three Amigos, starring Wesley Snipes, Chris Christopherson, Ron Perlman, Luke Ross, Lenore Varela, Norman Reedus, and Donnie Yen in his American debut. Oscar-winning dialogue. It totally was, Sam. Chris Christopherson is awesome. The film had a box office of 155 million on a budget of 54 million. When we think of the perennial superhero movie that got me into superhero movies, I would say Blade did. Wesley Snipes in the first Blade made it look cool. Again, mixing that horror element with superheroes. Blade 2, I think, is the best superhero movie to come out at that time. I thought Del Toro, his way of making everything dark, I think he was perfect for, the way he makes everything in terms of gothic looking, has the strange characters. I love the Mimic. I love that film, that idea of it. I think he did a great job of pulling in his usuals on Ron Perlman and turning into where Blade actually goes undercover, working with the vampires to take out a virus that is killing vampires. It's great story. Had my man Donnie Yen, even though he dies bullshitly in the film, I would love to see him in a final fight. But it was choreographed by him. And for those who don't know Donnie Yen, he is one of the biggest Asian movie stars, action stars there is. Loved everything about this film, especially Themyscirus, who is the head vampire, looked a lot like Nosferatu. And when I did a little research on this, they wanted Tim Curry to play that role, which I thought would have been awesome. But this film has a lot of things going for it. It has action, comedy, and a lot of blood.
It does. Yes.
Yeah. It does have one little glitch in the film, or like a little mishap when he throws the sunglasses at him.
Mhm.
If you look in the background, you see him doing it again. So they didn't do the take right. But I love it. I love Chris Christopherson as the old.
Oh, he's great.
Man.
He's great.
Yeah.
He's great.
Yeah.
Great.
What you think about this one, my man?
Chris Christopherson, great. Ron Perlman, again, great. I'm with you. That first Blade movie, seeing that one in the theater, that was probably the first time really I think remember seeing, besides like those Batman movies, a superhero movie in the theater that was, wasn't Batman. So it was really cool. I'm really just today, I think they announced they're moving forward on the new one. It's going to be rated R.
Yeah, and I'm glad they did that. But that's been kind of like in development hell for like the longest. And I know Wesley Snipes has been saying, "Oh, you can't make them like that before." And I'm like, I mean, I guess, but
If they do it like a Dread, maybe, and make it like cooler or different,
yeah, I'm hoping it does a good job, because Blade is the persona and character is just awesome.
That's true.
As basically a human vampire that he says in the beginning of the first one, he has all their powers, none of their weaknesses, which I thought was awesome. I hope, and they're trying to tie it in together with the Eternals and the Marvel Eternals and stuff like that, which wasn't that great of a film, but they're trying to tie it all together, and I hope it works out. I mean, crazy thing is, Tone, doing research for this film for Blade 2, I found out that they wanted to have Nick Fury appear in the film, but they couldn't get the rights for him to appear. New Line couldn't get the rights for him, so they went with Joshua Frohmeyer instead, another character in the film to appear. Norman Reedus as Scud always cracks me up in this film, especially when we first introduced him and he's smoking weed and watching Powerpuff Girls, which always cracked me up. And I was a huge fan of Lenore Varela as Nitsa. I thought she was super hot in this film.
Did a good job.
Yeah, and she was awesome. The fight scenes are great. Luke Ross as Nomak was great. And Ron Perlman as Reinhardt. Even though Reinhardt's supposed to be like a neo-Nazi, I'm glad they didn't push that in this film. But I thought he was a badass, and he never takes off his sunglasses, which I thought was cool.
Great pick. This was definitely, I was going to have to pick. We were going to have to pick a Blade for tonight, so I'm glad you picked this one.
Yeah. Oh, also, before I forget, Del Toro loved his initial designs for the creatures and the effects. He wanted to base them off the Reapers, the evil vampires, off the Lost Boys.
Oh, you know how much I love the Lost Boys. That's cool.
Yeah, and he was actually attached to the Lost Boys film in the 80s to direct. So he used those designs he had there for the Reapers.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
That's cool.
But let's move on to your next one, my friend.
General, would you care to step outside?
Superman.
Superman. I mean,
Come to me, son of Jor-El. Kneel before Zod.
1980 Superman 2, directed by Richard Lester, who also directed the Beatles music video, Hard Day's Night. He did The Bed Sitting Room and The Three Musketeers. The film stars Christopher Reeve, Gene Hackman, Margaret Kidder, and Ned Beatty. It had a box office of $214 million and a budget of $54 million. Tone, tell me why you picked this one.
Hi, I'm Christopher Reeve, and I've just arrived in London to start shooting Superman 2, which is the sequel to a story you may have seen about a guy who wears funny underwear.
Honestly, Christopher Reeve is another. I love thinking of the what if stories, and honestly, I think he's an awesome Superman. I think he looks exactly like the comic books. He did a great Clark Kent. I think after part 2, it does get a little ridiculous with Richard Pryor, but part 2 with General Zod, of course, Michael Shannon did a good job playing him, but I just like the overall being a kid and seeing this movie at like 9 or 10, and it doesn't look like the things that are on the late 80s or 90s. It does look, it's a little dated, but like, again, the classic performances of the actors in the movie, I think, is what always brings me back.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like I said when we were off camera earlier, when we first came, into the room, I was like, man, I haven't seen this film in like a long time. It cracks me up because Gene Hackman, Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor's bald, and I totally forgot. Like Gene Hackman didn't want to be bald, so they made him wear wigs that were just worse, like to make it look like he was bald. He was balding. I love the Christopher Reeve Superman. I mean, that's what he's known for, is Christopher Reeve Superman. He's known for Superman. This one I don't think is as good as the first one, but I think it's just because of the way the director had a little, direction of it. But I like this film a lot.
Well, don't they have the, I think I got it over here on Blu-ray somewhere, the Richard Donner version of this?
Yeah, the Richard Donner version of it. And, he shot enough scenes to make his own cut of the film in 2004. That's why they decided to do it. But also, like Eve Tessmacher in the first film, like she was supposed to, after she leaves the Fortress of Solitude, she doesn't appear anymore. Yeah,
I think these three are what really makes this one for me. It's they're ridiculous, and just Terrence Stamp. I watched this movie with Steven Soderbergh called The Limey. He's
Mhm.
got like white hair. He's like, but to be told that this is actually the same guy, it was like, whoa. So like again, I will agree. This is the first one I saw, but then as I was older, I rewatched the first one. Hackman nails that first movie pretty awesomely. So, but again, this is a good camp Superman. Great.
I will always know Terrence Stamp from one movie. I'll let you guess which one it is.
Ooh, Terrence Stamp. You're gonna say it, and I know. Say it. What it is?
Young Guns.
Oh yeah. Yes. I could punch the wall right now. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I love them as John Tunstall. Yeah, I love Terrence Stamp. He's also in the Yes Man. It's the yes guy who goes yes.
He's again. I always get him and Malcolm McDowell.
Oh yeah.
Used for some reason. I don't know why, but again, his role is in this movie is definitely. He's also really cool. In right after Young Guns, he was in Alien Nation with James Caan. Pretty good in that movie too. But great actor.
Yep, he landed in the planet of Houston.
Yes.
We landed. This is the planet. I was gonna have that as a our line opener, but it was just too short. He's like, "Oh, I am here in the planet of Houston." Yeah, I love Zod. Zod's awesome. Also, I tried to look for the clip where Neo before Zod. It's actually in Kevin Smith's Mallrats with Jay when he hits the security guard in the back of the head with the bat, and he says, "Son of Jewel, Neo before Zod." And he goes, "Snoochie Boochies," and he runs away. I couldn't find a good cut of it, or else I would have played it. But excellent pick, Tone. Really brought back my childhood for this one.
Good. Trying to mix it all up. That was a good one.
Let's move on to our next one, my man.
The accumulated filth of all their sex and murder will foam up around their waists. And all the whores and politicians will look up and shout, "Save us." I'll whisper, "No."
2009's Watchmen, directed by Zack Snyder, who did 300, Justice League, Rebel Moon, Batman vs. Superman, Army of the Dead, Man of Steel, and Dawn of the Dead. The film stars Jackie Earle Haley, Patrick Wilson, Carla Gugino, Malin Ackerman, Billy Crudup, Matthew Good, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. It had a budget of $130 million with a box office of $186 million. On top of it, it had $152 million in video sales. This is my pick, and if I had to say my favorite superhero film, it's this one. Reason being, it's off a graphic novel, Watchmen, which I read before the film came out. I remember one of my buddies from Menards, when I worked at Menards, he constantly told me, "You have to read The Watchmen. You have to read The Watchmen." And I picked it up, loved it. It's a little longer. It's by a British creative team of Alan Moore and David Gibbons for DC Comics, but it has a lot of superheroes that we know, but they're not in the comic book. They're like based off, like Night Owl is based off Batman. You have this group of superheroes who are basically vigilantes, and it shows a dark side of humanity in it. It's more of a grimy, sleazy way of looking at superheroes. And I thought the film captured the essence of the graphic novel, besides the sex scene when they're in Archie the damn with that was kind of weird, but I loved everything about the film. I'm a big fan of people getting second chances and people getting resurrections to his career. This film resurrected Jackie Earle Haley's career. He was pretty basically known as Kelly Leak from the Bad News Bears. He did some other films, but this kind of got a chance to show his acting chops again. And also, he's a black belt in Kempo, even though he didn't use Kempo in the film. He did some badass fighting scenes in it. It was just greatly done. It was 2.5 hours long, but it didn't feel like it. And it had an awesome soundtrack. The End is the Beginning by the Smashing Pumpkins was used in the trailer. I love Jeffrey Dean Morgan as the comedian. I mean, I could go on about forever about this film. I really love this film. So, what do you think about it?
I mean, another really good movie. Really good movie. So good that I really enjoyed the television show that was on HBO too. That they did. I really like Malin Ackerman in it. She's somebody I enjoy a lot. I think the in depth of the story. It's different than all the other superhero movies that I have seen up until this point. Again, it's cool that it's based off of a graphic novel. Just all around a good presentation on film of a different superhero. I mean, when this movie comes out again, I'm not familiar with the graphic novel, but visually it's amazing, I think.
Yeah, and this is something that was kind of like in the works for years with Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder, Warner hired Snyder of 300 fame, and casting rumors for this, like, included Rorschach, who is played by Jackie Earle Haley. David Bowie was considered for it, Sir John Hurt, Robin Williams, Sean Penn. This went through like years and years of development hell. Dr. Manhattan, who there's one complaint. People say there's too much Dr. Manhattan being naked. But I mean, that's how he is in the comic book. He just doesn't give a shit. But Arnold Schwarzenegger was considered for the role. Dolph Lundgren, Keanu Reeves, and the comedian Tommy Lee Jones, Gary Busey, Ron Perlman, Thomas Jane, who Night Owl was like. Richard Gere was considered. Silk Spectre. Jamie Lee Curtis was considered. Hilary Swank. Ozymandias. Tom Cruise, who I thought would have done a great job, or Jude Law would have done a great job. And then as the mom of Silk Spectre, the first version, Sigourney Weaver, Liv Tyler, it's just crazy that this film was in production hell and then it finally got made. And it was, I thought it was true to the original source material. It got the message across of that sometimes our heroes are the worst people and sometimes they, crack a few eggs to make an omelet, as they say. And like I mentioned earlier with Cotton about how, the book genre of people get upset when you change stuff. I, for one, actually prefer the film to the book, which is, I know Tony don't like, it's rare for me to say, but I love the ending of this film because in the book, they make it seem like a giant squid or aliens are coming and they have to band together. Russia and the United States has to band together to defeat them. In the film, they make Dr. Manhattan the bad guy.
Yeah.
And that's the reason that prevents the World War III by having Russia and the US unite to face one common enemy in Dr. Manhattan, until Rorschach gives the true story of what really happened. But I love I loved it. I love the twist ending of it, all that stuff. I just there's so much more I can say about the film, but I don't want to have this pod go on the 3
Yeah,
hours.
it's definitely one like a lot of these movies we talk about when we do these breakdowns. We're going to do a whole breakdown on this movie because it's filled with that much goodies, and it's a great pick that you did.
Yeah, it's gonna talk about it forever, but I love the artistic, style of it. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Also, if you read the graphic novel, it's worth the read. It's what got everybody into graphic novels. Was this when it kind of brought this film brought back everybody else reading other graphic novels like Frank Miller's The Dark Knight. It brought back that genre of bringing it back up. But check it out, Watchmen, and also check out the series on HBO. But Tone, are you ready to close it out with your pick, my man?
Let's do it.
Listen, Sammy, I'm not a very good shot, but this Samaritan here used really big bullets. What do you say we work this out nice, peaceful? Oh, crap.
2004's Hellboy, directed by Guillermo del Toro, his second appearance on this list, starring Ron Perlman, Doug Jones, Selma Blair, John Hurt, and Jeffrey Tambor. The movie had a box office of $99 million on a budget of $66 million. Tone, tell me why you picked this one.
Again, Ron Perlman starring in a superhero movie at the box office. Like, I remember opening weekend, went to this, and as you mentioned quite a few times tonight, I would like that third movie so we can close out the trilogy, because that's what we were promised when it came out. But I don't think that that's going to happen. But that being said, I was also blown away. One day I'm looking at my alma mater, Ball State, and I was blown away that Doug Jones, that's where he went to college, which was Doug Jones, this gentleman who does all this cool creature effects. He's in quite a lot of stuff. Really good at what he does. And again, I just like the overall theme in this movie. I like John Hurt, of course, our alien, our man from Alien, playing like the father figure in this. I think it's again, another different spin on a comic book character.
Yeah, and I to be honest with you, like Del Toro is so good with his imagination of creatures and the way they're going to look. And comic book movies suit him so well because he has the mind to make those characters come to life. And this comic book is this movie is based off a comic book that was released by Mike Mignola in Dark Horse Comics that came out with the same title, Hellboy. I think he did a great job of it. Ron Perlman, I remember this film came out and people showed, they're showing the screenshots of Perlman, the stills, and they were like, Ron Perlman's such a great actor. Like, why does he get such shit roles where he has to dress up in, these character roles? And he did a great job.
Yeah.
Perlman is Del Toro's boy from Kronos.
Oh, yeah.
All the way back to Kronos. He's in Nightmare Alley. He does all of Del Toro's movies, and I thought he captured the essence of the Hellboy character. Also, he's older, so being in that makeup hid his age.
Yeah.
And like you said, Doug Jones, who's done, God, he's in Pan's Labyrinth as the creature. He's a great actor, and he's a person that acts through his mannerisms and his to convey his emotions. And he does an excellent job. He's a great monster actor. Probably, the greatest of our time. I mean, there's people will say like you have Boris Karloff as Frankenstein and Bela Lugosi as Dracula. Doug Jones is probably the best monster character actor there is. And I love the fact that David Hyde Pierce did the voice for his character in this film and chose not to be credited because he said Doug Jones made that character. I didn't.
That's awesome. Very awesome.
What'd you think of the remake?
I like David Harbour. The movie itself, it didn't have what I would call that Guillermo del Toro flair like these two did. I mean, honestly, you can make an argument that part 2 is better than part 1 because it takes a step up a little bit more. But again, it's different. It's not the same vibe. Not that David Harbour did a bad job. I just think it's watchable, but it's not this.
And like I said, Perlman, people are like, why he's such a great actor? Why is he getting these horrible roles? But this role wasn't horrible, as it turns out.
No.
The studio wanted Vin Diesel to be Hellboy. We're gonna go for a ride.
No, I was thinking about it, but is Pitch Black, is that considered like superhero?
I would say it's kind of more sci-fi, I guess. Riddick would be more superhero-ish, I guess. I mean, superhero is more subjective. Another subjective subject. You know what I mean? Like, it's the eye of the beholder what they think is a superhero. Yes, Golden Army was great, Baloney. I would say probably Golden Army is probably the better of the two, but I really like the first one. The character of John Myers by Rupert Evans, I didn't really like him too much in the film, and I was kind of glad he wasn't in the second one. I love the strange characters, and again, like I love all the the creatures that Del Toro brings up. Whenever there's a Del Toro film, there's going to be a lot of strange characters that are there. Could be shown on screen that look cool. So,
before, real quick, I didn't pick these two, but I was curious if you had ever seen these two superhero movies. What do you think of Hancock and My Super Ex-Girlfriend? Have you ever seen any of these two?
So Hancock, I have seen, and I have seen My Super Ex-Girlfriend. My Super Ex-Girlfriend is cheesy.
I mean, I didn't pick it, but it's pretty cheesy.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Hancock was okay. It had some enjoyable parts.
It's been a
I'm just
long
not
time since I've seen
I'm
it.
just not a Will
Yeah.
Smith fan.
No.
Yeah, I watched it. I thought it was enjoyable for what it was. I can't. Probably never like his films just don't give me a lot of rewatchability just because I don't really like him too much.
I
But
get you.
but I did like the part in the prison when he said he was gonna shove that guy's head up out of that guy's ass. That cracks me up. But it was cool.
Cool. Awesome.
So those are our 10 superhero movies. So you're getting a long episode for this one. I do have a question for you, Tone. We went through 10 superhero movies that were either known or kind of like a unknown, but the ones that don't get a lot of love. We kind of gave a couple of those there. But what comic book movie would you want that hasn't been made yet?
They talk about it a long time, and I don't really, know. I mean, after I think it was in Guardians of the Galaxy, after the credits rolled, Howard the Duck was there. I mean, that first one was just so awful. Maybe do some Howard the Duck. How about you, Young?
So there is a graphic novel that I was really into. There was a game for the Xbox that was released in the early 2000s. It's called The Darkness. And in the game, the voice characters always, were awesome for it. Kirk Acevedo actually does the lead character of Jackie Escanado. And the whole point of the story is Jackie's family has a lineage of having this dark entity in them, and it takes over certain members of their family when they turn 21. It corrupts them to where they kill, and it basically turns them into a devil, and it basically feeds off people's souls, their hearts. And he's in the mob. And in the first game and in the graphic novel, his uncle Paulie kills his love of his life, and it just goes through trials and tribulations of him trying to find himself, of trying to get this entity out of him, learning about his history and how he can defeat it, to getting revenge on his uncle. And then the second game is awesome. It's basically him living with it, going on from there. And then there was supposed to be a third game but it was never made, which is unfortunate. But there were talks about The Darkness being made. I remember, like maybe the 2010s, there was like real push for it to be made, and then it went dormant, and now it's in production hell. So I don't think it's ever going to be made, but I would love like a version of that film. Even if they did an animated version of it, I would love it, like the Constantine movies you do now. I would love to see that.
Baloney says here, why The Last Man was in developmental hell forever. It's my favorite graphic novel, was supposed to be a series that got canceled. That story can be awesome on HBO. That would be,
Yeah.
check that out.
Same thing, Baloney, with in terms of HBO, Constantine, before we had Constantine earlier in our list, Constantine was supposed to be a more edgier HBO series that they were going to release without Keanu Reeves, that got canceled before they talked about the new movie coming out.
Can you I wish you could re-ask me the question again, which one I'd like to get remade. Just do it one more time.
Which film would you like to get remade? Which comic?
Unfortunately, has already been made. It's Morbius.
Oh God.
No, I'm just kidding. No, it's not. I don't like that movie. I just thought that'd be. But yeah, that would be a good one, The Darkness.
Yeah. I'll send you a thing about it. You can read about it. It's really interesting. But that is our show for our superhero movies. We still got a couple things to go with. Do you have anything to add before we close out this section, Tom?
Just really quick, I'd like to just suggest 2 new movies that I saw that are streaming that are really awesome. One is a horror movie, Yumper, and if you haven't seen it yet, it's been getting a lot of reviews. It's on Peacock. It's called Abigail. It's really awesome little movie that I watched. And honestly, this other movie that I watched, it was on HBO. It was called Love Lies Bleeding. It has like Kirsten, what's her name from Twilight?
Stewart.
Yes, but what I really like in this movie is the bad. It's a crime movie, but the bad guy in the movie is Ed Harris in this ridiculous wig that you got to see. It's epic. And if you like crime movies, it was pretty good. But how about you, man? You got anything?
The new season of Cobra Kai came out. If you're into that, check that out. I'm definitely going to check that. Also, I want to go see the Wolverine Deadpool film to see how that is. So that's what I'm gonna try and get to before our next week's show. Speaking of next week's show, Tone, let's tell everybody what's coming soon.
Let's do it.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Coming soon.
Próximamente.
Coming soon.
Coming soon.
All right, coming up next Friday, right? We're running on Friday. Yes, on Friday. Man, did I love Long Legs. But because of Long Legs and the amazingness that it is, it just broke the record for Neon, the film company that made it, just broke records at the box office. We're gonna go back into a movie that's kind of like Long Legs that we like a lot. It's Seven, real good, awesome thriller that has Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. A real good, positive movie. Please join in next Friday. It's going to be good.
A good, positive movie?
Yes, positive.
Yeah, a film that both Tony and I love, a David Fincher film. We're going to do a deep dive, so we will do the film development, breakdown, and the critical reception along also with the fan theories. And I know there's some fan theories for Seven, so I'm going to look into that a little bit more for the week. But it's going to be a fun show, Tone.
Yeah, we've been having some debates around the house here. I took Katie to see the movie, and she didn't take to it as well as I did. Not that she didn't like it; she just found it to be extremely creepy. But I like creepy movies, so it could be awesome to talk about Seven next week. Maybe we'll spoil what's in the box.
Yeah, we might spoil what's in the box, baloney. So be sure to join us next week for that. It's going to be a fun show. And Tone, let's just close this out, my friend, with the Sugar Baggies soundtrack pick of the week.
Let's do it.
The Sugar Baggies soundtrack pick of the week.
It's trivia time, Yemper. Are you ready? I'm going to play the song, and you're going to tell me what superhero film is this a song from. Here we go. That is Filter. Can You Trip Like I Do? And the soundtrack, it's kind of like Judgment Night, but instead of metal and hip hop, it's metal and electronica, and it is the Spawn soundtrack. That is Filter and the Crystal Method right there. But you had everyone on the soundtrack, from Korn and the Dust Brothers, Marilyn Manson and the Sneaker Pips, Metallica and DJ Spooky, Stabbing Westward and Wink, Butthole Surfers and Moby, Silverchair, Vitro, Henry Rollins, Goldie, Orbital, Hammett, and Kirk Hammett. Just really, really, even Incubus and DJ Greyboy. But it was really cool because this was when all these bands were really blowing up. Your Crystal Method and your Chemical Romance and all the DJs. But what was cool was they got together with more heavier bands and they presented the soundtrack. And the Filter and the Crystal Method song is actually really, really good. Some of the other stuff, it's kind of aged not the best, but again, really cool to see. I was going to pick Spawn because of the great John Leguizamo as Clown, but I needed to be able to say John Leguizamo as Clown because it's awesome. But this soundtrack, though, for the time when it came out, I thought it was a good one. And it was cool because at the opening we had Cotton doing Iron Man 3, and then to end it out, I found a pretty cool soundtrack to wrap it up.
Yeah, that's awesome. The great soundtrack. I actually like the movie as well.
Yeah.
Michael J. White
did a good job
as Spawn. There's supposed to be a remake coming out, a reboot with Jamie Foxx.
That's true.
Spawn. So we'll see how that goes. That's in development hell too, especially with Jamie Foxx's recent health issues. But great soundtrack. John Leguizamo as Clown will always crack me up. As the Clown and Violator. Tone, you're rocking the hair out today. I just noticed.
I am.
No hat for Tony.
I need to get a haircut is what I need. My wife says it one more time. Every time she says it, I should get $1.
He's letting it flow. But
yeah, there we go.
But great pick, my man. Before we go right off into the sunset and put a bow on this one, I do want to mention that fellow Penguin Marge has a donation thing going for PKD, I believe it is, which is she does a walk every year for people with PKD disease that affects kidney disease. If you want to run over to her Twitter account.
Yeah, her fundraising page, it's all on there. You can donate. It's just really awesome to something that is helpful. As she stated on Wednesday on the show, the hookup show, is she was just saying how it helps her. So please do that.
Yes, check her out at Marge, MARJ RAGUSO on Twitter. She has it actually pinned to her Twitter page. It's the PKD Foundation. Sorry for the brain fart earlier. I don't know why. I just had 25 things running through my head before I could think of it. But Marge is awesome. She does a walk every year. She suffers from the condition and she wants to get more awareness and help with family fight through the disease. So if you can donate $1, that'd be great. Any bit helps and support that. She does a walk every year, so she'll be doing that. And you can keep, I think it goes on through September, but you can keep getting donations after that. So if you can, please help her out there. Again, you can find her on Twitter at MARJRAGUSO. It's pinned up to the top of her profile. And that is the end. Thank you so much for listening to this long edition of the At the Show podcast. So Cotton, you got your over 2-hour episode. Thanks again to Michael Cotton for coming on. I love having him talking movies with him and hear him rant about random things that are not the DH or bunting. Be sure to check him out at the Son Ranto Show and the Baseball Rabbit Hole podcast. Tone, any final thoughts before we go out, my friend?
Another great episode. Excited to see what Mr. Cotton brings the next time. He's really good at really a lot of good points to what we talked about tonight through all these awesome superhero movies. And I'm excited to see what you're going to say when you go see Wolverine and Deadpool.
For sure.
Wolverine.
But with that, everybody, you guys have a great night, and we will be back next week with 7. Take it easy. Deuces.
Thanks for listening to the At the Show podcast, a Sadistic Penguin Studios production.
Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do?
Maybe we could build a fire, sing a couple of songs, huh? Why don't we try that?